So let's talk about the 13th century poet Rumi and his ideas on love. But here's the thing. To really get his philosophy, you first have to understand his incredible story. And this quote, it just nails the heart of Rumi's whole journey. He believed that we're all kind of like a candle, and our purpose is to be completely consumed by the flame of divine love. It's this process of annihilation, not in a bad way, but in a way where the old self, that shadow, just completely disappears. This idea of a total, radical transformation, that's the key to understanding everything that happened to him.
All right, so to really get this, we have to go back to the beginning and look at the man Rumi was before his world was set on fire.
You see, before he was the mystic we all know today, Jalaluddin Muhammad Rumi was a totally different guy. Think of him as a celebrated scholar, a man of Islamic law whose entire life revolved around books, logic, and the intellect. But a single encounter was about to put him on a completely new path, one that wasn't guided by the mind, but by the heart. The spark for all this change was a person. So picture this. Rumi is in the middle of a lecture, and this mysterious, wandering mystic named Shams of Tabriz just walks in and disrupts everything. And this wasn't just a simple interruption. It was basically a spiritual earthquake. And Rumi's reaction? It's just so human, you know? When Shams points to his precious books and asks what they are, Rumi is just dismissive, full of that academic pride. He pretty much says, "This is way over your head," having no clue that his entire universe is about to get flipped inside out. And then, as the story goes, the impossible happens. The books just burst into flames. As a totally stunned Rumi stares, Shams just calmly echoes Rumi's own words right back at him. But now they had this profound new meaning. He's showing him, hey, there's a whole other kind of understanding, a fiery, direct experience that you will never ever find in books. This single event completely changed the game, revealing a new path for Rumi, what he would later call the religion of love. So what was this new path? It was Sufism, which Shams introduced to Rumi. Now, this wasn't some new religion, it was a mystical path within Islam. The whole goal shifted from just learning about God from books to actually directly experiencing God's love right in your own heart. And you can hear this total 180-degree turn in his own words. He's basically saying his entire old life, the one filled with books and intellectual debates, had completely missed the point. He finally understood that the real path, the lover's path, wasn't in a library. It was in the heart. But just as Rumi was finding this incredible new way of life, it was all about to be shattered by the pain of loss. Yeah, not everyone was a fan of this new mystical Rumi. His old colleagues, the religious establishment, they really didn't like his Sufi practices. And in this hostile atmosphere, Shams just suddenly vanished. It's widely believed he was murdered by people who hated his influence over Rumi. Man, you can just feel the heartbreak in these words, can't you? The light that had illuminated his entire world was just gone. This wasn't just losing a friend. For Rumi, it was like the sun that his entire universe revolved around had been extinguished. But here's the incredible part. Out of that darkness, that immense pain, that's when Rumi the poet was truly born. He transformed his grief into one of the greatest collections of mystical poetry the world has ever seen. At first, Rumi kind of saw his poetry as just a reflection of his lost master's wisdom. He was the moon and Shams was the sun. But through the very act of writing, of creating, Rumi began to absorb that light. And eventually, he transformed from just a reflector into a beacon of light all on his own. And this whole evolution led him to write his absolute masterpiece, the Masnavi. And this wasn't just a book of emotional poems anymore. No, this was a complex, multi-layered guide, packed with stories and parables, all designed to help other people find that path to divine love for themselves. He had become the teacher. So what's the big idea here? What's the core of Rumi's philosophy? Well, he explains it perfectly in one of his most famous stories. Okay, so the story is about this guy named Majnun, who is famously madly in love with a woman named Layla. He goes on and on about her beauty so poetically that the king just has to see her for himself. But when Layla is finally brought to the court, the king's just like, this is it? She looks pretty ordinary. And Lila's response is just perfect. She tells the king that the problem isn't her. The problem is his perception. To see her true beauty, he'd have to look at her through the eyes of someone who absolutely adores her. He would need Majnun's eyes. And boom, that's it. That is the heart of Rumi's teaching. Love isn't just a feeling you have for one person. It's a way of seeing. It's about looking at the entire world, all of creation, with the same deep adoration that Majnun has for Layla. That is divine love.
And that powerful idea is what has created such an enduring legacy for Rumi.
I mean, look at how this spread. Right after he died, his followers started the Mevlevi Sufi order. His writings then spread all across the Islamic world, eventually made their way to the West, and today he is one of the most widely read poets on the entire planet. And maybe this is why he's still so beloved. He offers his work as a kind of refuge. This quote isn't just a pretty line of poetry, it's a direct invitation. For centuries, people who have felt lost or heartbroken have found real strength in his words, seeing them as an invincible fortress for the soul. So, we'll leave you with this question, turning Rumi's whole philosophy back on ourselves. His great lesson is that love is a choice, a mode of perception. So the challenge he leaves us with is this. In your own life, what part of the world, what person, what idea could you start to see differently if you just chose to look at it with the eyes of Majnun?